Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment. We're going to be speaking with Daniel Shapiro, author of The Thin Ledge, a husband's memoir of love, trauma, and unexpected circumstances. He's joining us to talk about the reality of the 15 years that he spent living and caring for his wife, who suffered some very, very serious problems. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Daniel Shapiro. Thank you for taking the time this morning.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
Now, you're an author. Is that your main profession?
No, this is the first book that I've written. I've been a lawyer for many years, trial lawyer in Chicago. And that's how I've made my living and provided for my family. And writing is something that I came to a bit later. It's something I always did professionally as a lawyer, but not in terms of creating a book of my own. And I just found that the experience that I had was such that getting it down, getting my thoughts into writing and putting it on paper would be useful for me, and I think maybe for other people as well.
Now, when you're talking about your thoughts, what thoughts are we talking about? What was the situation that prompted you to pen The Thin Ledge?
Sure. When I was 40 years old, I was married to a woman that I had met in college. We had a long relationship. Got married before I had finished law school, and then went about having and beginning to raise our family. And when my wife was 40, she was diagnosed with a cavernous angioma, which is a collection of blood vessels. Hers was in a part of her brain that was inaccessible surgically. And the cavernous angioma is sometimes, not always, but sometimes hemorrhage, which is what happened to her. And that happened a couple of times, and it created a tremendous amount of brain injury, traumatic brain injury and damage that impaired her in all sorts of ways. I found the experience extremely difficult and challenging in all sorts of respects, and I found that writing down some of my thinking, how I was going to cope with all of that, how she was coping, how to navigate the experience would be enhanced if I wrote about what experience I was having. And by writing it, I could understand it better. I could think about it more clearly. And as it turned out, I could share that with other people who were having experiences that were also challenging, and give them a resource, I think, for bouncing their own ideas around as they were deciding how they were going to navigate their own lives.
Now, you said you found the experience very difficult in many aspects. You all had kids by the time you were 40, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. We had 3 children. When my wife got sick, our kids were 10, 8, and 4. And so in addition to practicing law, I and caring for my wife, I was also a parent. We had done everything, my wife and I, in terms of parenting, had done everything together, but she had stopped working when our oldest was 1. And that made her the principal caregiver. After she got sick, I became the principal parent, sort of a single parent for my kids. And that was a new role for me. And frankly, one that I loved and still do, but not anticipated and not planned.
Now, 1 in 5 Americans are caregivers. Most caregivers happen to be women. Give me a male's perspective on taking care of someone in such a severe state.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's come up before. I don't know if there are real gender identifiers for this. I mean, I think that it's such an unusual circumstance to be a relatively young person caring for a spouse and raising children that I'm not sure men and women, I never thought about it as a gender issue, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, I found that the difficulties and the challenges weren't really gender-based. I mean, I had to go out and continue making a living, which I did. I had to deal with what was essentially the slow motion loss of a spouse. I don't really think that's a gender-based experience. I think whether you're a man or a woman, if you lose the person that you love and you're building a life with, that is an experience that would impact everybody regardless of gender. So I know that women are the vast majority of caretakers. I suppose that fact is reflective of societal attitudes about who caretakers are. Mm-hmm. But that was not my experience. It's not the circumstance that I found myself in. And so, you're presented with obligations and responsibilities and needs, your own and other people who depend on you, and you respond to all of that. And I think whether you're a man or a woman, you respond as required, and not really gender-based in my view.
Looking back now, is there anything that you think that maybe you said to yourself then that you feel is advice that others need to hear now? And is that advice included in The Thin Ledge?
I'm reluctant to give advice. What I try to do in the book is to recount my experience and the path that I took and what worked and what didn't work. And to some extent, not even drawing conclusions about what worked and didn't work, but just to sort of report on the path that I took and how I thought my way through, and to some extent just acted my way through the experience that was in front of me. I think the piece of this that I would offer is that in these extraordinary circumstances that people have to contend with, you do the best that you possibly can, as often as you can. That doesn't mean always, because I fell short many times, but you sort of, bring as much of yourself to bear as you can on the problems that you're confronting, and you take care of your kids and you take care of your spouse and you do the best that you can do. And then, if I were to say one thing, I would say, once you've done the best you can, recognize that and adjust your expectations. These circumstances are so overwhelming and so demanding and so impossible in some respects that I don't know if it's possible to get in and out of them perfectly. I certainly didn't. And I think I would take some comfort in understanding that you have human limitations because you're a human being, and you're being asked to do things that in some instances are superhuman, and not everything is doable and not every problem is solvable. Some of it is just getting through.
Talk a little bit briefly about support groups. How did you talk to anyone? Was anyone available for you to, for lack of a better term, vent to, cry to, complain to?
Oh, sure. There were a lot of people. I had a terrific network of friends and family, and very supportive. And I had, the luxury of being able to afford a professional person, a therapist who I would see during various points in the experience that I had. And that was just a fortunate thing for me. But at the end of the day, figuratively and literally, you are there by yourself, and the crying and complaining and venting and for sure goes on. I can't imagine keeping everything inside, so that's a valuable thing. But when you're all done with that, you go home and your kids are there and your spouse is there, and they need things from you and you need things from them. And that's a very private set of exchanges that you have, and other people in that sense really aren't directly involved. It's the venting is useful, but it doesn't make anything go away.
The Thin Ledge, a husband's memoir of love, trauma, and unexpected circumstances. Give us a website where we can get a copy of your book.
Book is most easily found on Amazon. Okay. And so if you go to Amazon and look up The Thin Ledge, it's an Amazon bestseller, and I'm proud of that. The book seems to be having been received very well. I'm getting a lot of nice reviews. It's a 5-star reviewed book on Amazon, and I would encourage you to go out and give it a read. People seem to, I don't want to say they enjoy it because it's a tough story, but I think they're getting something from it, and that's very rewarding for me, and I hope that it's rewarding for the people who are reading the book.
I appreciate you joining us here on the program, Daniel. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and good luck with everything that you've got going on in the future.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Daniel Shapiro, author of The Thin Ledge, a husband's memoir of love, trauma, and unexpected circumstances. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.